You know, for millions of people, coming to America was the absolute dream. But here's the thing, that dream had to get past the gatekeepers first. We're about to dive into the story of two of America's most famous gateways, and it's a tale of incredible hope, heartbreaking hardship, and really, the very definition of what it meant to become an American.
And really, this one quote just says it all, doesn't it? These gateways were supposed to be the golden door to a brand new life, but that door could slam shut in an instant, turning all that hope into heartbreak. This tension, this knife's edge between a dream coming true and a dream being denied, well, that's the real heart of this story.
So before we get to the iconic red brick buildings of Ellis Island that everyone pictures, you have to understand what came before. The process of arriving in America, especially in a place like New York, was anything but orderly. I mean, it was just dangerously chaotic.
So just imagine this. You've been on a ship for weeks, it's been a grueling journey, and you finally step on land. But you're not stepping into some organized hall. No, you're stepping right into a swirling mob of people. Sure, there were relatives there to greet you, but there were also government inspectors, shouting, trying to get names down, and even worse, hordes of predators. We're talking hustlers, pickpockets, and swindlers, all ready to prey on these exhausted and unsuspecting newcomers.
So America's first real crack at a centralized depot was this place, Castle Garden. And look, it processed an incredible 8 million people, but it was just completely overwhelmed. The chaos was so infamous that the Yiddish word Kesselgarten literally came to mean any kind of noisy, confusing mess. With corruption right outside the gates and no real medical facilities inside, it was pretty clear the federal government needed to step in and do something different.
Okay, so something had to change, right? And it did. In 1892, Ellis Island opened its doors. This was a full-on federal operation, designed from the ground up to bring order and efficiency to immigration. And right at the heart of this new system was a methodical and, let's be honest, pretty terrifying series of medical inspections. All right, so for every single third-class passenger, the test started the second they got off the ferry. As they were hauling all their luggage up this long flight of stairs, doctors were literally watching from above, looking for any sign of a limp or someone struggling for breath. Then came the line inspection, a rapid-fire scan where doctors had just 6 seconds to spot any potential illness. And if they saw anything even slightly suspicious, out came the chalk.
Think about that. A single letter, scribbled in chalk on your coat, could completely change your life. As you can see, H could mean heart problems. CT stood for trachoma, a really dreaded eye infection, and an X signaled a suspected mental illness. Any one of these marks meant you were pulled from the line for a much more intense and potentially devastating examination.
So here was a really fascinating challenge for the doctors. How do you test someone's intelligence when you don't even speak the same language? Well, since most immigrants didn't speak English, the inspectors used clever tools like jigsaw puzzles or mimicry tests. The whole point was to assess cognitive ability without a language barrier. But here's the catch. If you failed one of these seemingly simple tests, it could lead to a diagnosis of feeble-mindedness and immediate deportation.
But listen, the story of America's gateways isn't just about Ellis Island, not by a long shot. Let's head over to the West Coast, where in 1910, another station opened up in San Francisco Bay, Angel Island. And while some people called it the Ellis Island of the West, well, the experience there was a whole different story.
And wow, this data right here tells such a stark story. Between 1910 and 1940, Ellis Island rejected about 6% of the people who came through. But then you look at Angel Island, and that rejection rate could skyrocket to as high as 33%. So the big question is, why? What was going on the West Coast that made the experience so much harsher?
This table really breaks it all down. The main population at Angel Island was Asian, primarily Chinese, who were facing these really harsh exclusionary laws that were aimed squarely at them. The medical focus was different too. Inspectors were looking for parasitic diseases like hookworm, which led to really lengthy detentions. So while your wait at Ellis Island might be just a few hours, at Angel Island it could stretch into weeks or even months of just grueling uncertainty. And if you want to understand the mindset behind this, just listen to this quote from a public health official at the time. This belief, this idea of inscrutable Asians, led to far more invasive and prolonged examinations. It basically turned the medical process from a health screening into a tool for exclusion.
While this era of mass immigration, of these massive processing stations, it couldn't last forever. It eventually came to an end. New laws passed in the 1920s drastically cut the number of people arriving, and slowly, the Great Gateways began to fall silent. This timeline really shows you the next chapter in their story.
By 1954, Ellis Island was completely abandoned, just left to crumble for decades. Angel Island's hospital closed a bit earlier, in 1946, and it also fell into disrepair. But their stories weren't over. Eventually, both were saved, painstakingly restored, and reborn as museums, dedicated to preserving the very history that happened inside their wall.
And what's so incredible is that today, the legacy of these places is more accessible than we could ever have imagined. Thanks to the amazing work of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation, nearly 65 million passenger records from the Port of New York, going all the way back to 1820, are now digitized and searchable online. I mean, for millions of Americans, it's this incredible, direct connection to their own family's past.
And you know what? The work is still going on. There are dedicated foundations out there right now still raising money to restore the huge hospital complexes and other decaying buildings on both islands, making sure that the full story, including the really difficult parts about detention and medical care, gets told.
So all of this leaves us here. These places that were once sites of inspection and detention are now places of reflection. Their paper records have become these vast digital archives. In an age where we can just instantly look up an ancestor's name on a ship's manifest, you have to ask, what can the stories of all those people who passed through these gates with all their hopes and all their fears, what can they really teach us today?